Hi guys, Happy New Year. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas and a lovely break. I know that I did, and I've come back feeling super fresh and fully charged, ready to take on 2018. I've got a really good feeling about this year and hoping it's going to be mine, so bring it on. Unfortunately, we did have a slight family emergency over the Christmas period. All seems to be okay now though, and all on the mend, which obviously we're really pleased about. But it's brought around today's topic, which is about long-term absences from work of staff and how it affects the business and the staff that are left, and whether there are any ways around that we can do and reach to make sure that we're covering ourselves. The first thing I would say is that it's well worth considering and having a backup plan and being proactive about it rather than reactive. When we're reactive, we tend to find ourselves pushed into a corner and we make silly mistakes and wrong decisions, and actually it just costs us loads of money as a company, wastes loads of time, and it affects our productivity as well. Whereas when we're proactive, we've got our plan in place, we know what we're going to do, we do it, we get it done, and it's all sorted. And hopefully we've looked into it properly and it's the most cost effective way to our business, and it supports everyone who's involved. So it's not very nice to talk about, but obviously the biggest reason for long-term absence is sickness, long-term sickness, or somebody having to be off to look after a family member or a dependent, again for long-term sickness reasons. And obviously it's got a huge impact on them as well as us as a company, and I would hope that that's the first thing that we consider as a business owner or a manager. Is how that person's feeling, how they're affected. It's almost time that you have to role reverse and put yourself in their boots, and how would you be feeling and what would you be wanting to know, what support would you want. So I know that probably the first thing that would cross my mind is how I would pay for things, where my money would be coming from. You know, a lot of companies can't afford to pay full-time salaries for staff that aren't there, so a lot of the time it's cut down almost to statutory sick pay, which isn't a lot at all, doesn't cover much. And that's if you're the only person who's sick. You know, if you, for example, are at home and you're looking after a partner, it could be that there are 2 wages now not coming in, and that just must be awful to think about. You know, how are you going to pay your mortgage, how are you going to pay your bills? There's nothing coming into the house, there's nothing, you know, there's no second wage that you can rely on. So it must be awful. So that's one of the first considerations I would take into account. I wouldn't want to add to that stress at all. Don't want to be that person. Secondly, not many of us are au fait with employment law, so they're going to be worried about how safe their job is. Have they got job security? Are they going to be replaced? Are they going to have a job to go back to? Obviously, most of us would like to think that a business will keep that vacancy open. They'll fill it for the meantime, but they'll keep it open and there'll always be a job for somebody to go back to. Unfortunately, I've witnessed firsthand that that's not always the case, and businesses and companies can be quite underhand. They're thinking about them, which, you know, I understand completely, but they're thinking about them first and what's right for the company and the business, and they do come up with these backhanded ways in order to get rid of somebody who might need time off in the future as well. And it wasn't very nice for the member of staff. I used to have them coming in crying their eyes out, you know, really stressed. What did they do? Where did they go and find another job? How did they get a reference? You know, all these things would cross their mind, and it was awful. And I hated being picky in the middle, because actually, as a manager, you can't say anything. You know, your role is, yes, to be there to support your members of staff, but you're also there to support the business and represent the business. So it's a sad fact, but it happens. And again, I would hate to add that onto somebody else when they're at home struggling and, you know, going through a bad time. I like my members of staff to know that they're supported and that we're there, even if they just want somebody to be a sounding board and they want to talk to someone. I like to think that they could come and talk to me. That's just the way I am. The next thing is they're also going to be worried about the people they've left behind at work. You know, it's not just colleagues that they're leaving behind. A lot of the time they're really close with these people and they become friends, and they know what they're leaving. They text, they know what's going on, you know, they communicate with people there, they know what's going on, they know what the stress is, and again, it puts the pressure on them to want to hurry back to work, so they don't feel like they're letting people down. You know, and again, we would hope that nobody feels like that, but I know from my own point of view, when I've had one sick day in my whole life, but when I did, you know, I felt so guilty. I just knew I should have been back at work, and I wanted to help be there to support the guys, because I knew at the end of the day, the guys at the head office, hundreds of miles up the road or a couple of miles up the road, don't really see what happens on the front line, and they don't think about it, and they don't care, and there's no one there who's going to cover it. And it's sad, but it's true. From a business point of view, long-term sit, I would hope that you're looking into covering, because, you know, it's going to affect your business, it's going to affect productivity. The first thing we did was go to a temp agency, see whether they could get us somebody in. The problem with that is that the temp agencies are really expensive. The money doesn't even go to the temps, you know, they're on just about above minimum wage, most of them. The markup that the temp agencies take is just crazy money. And again, in turn, that brings its own problems, because their staff then start to try sending over people who aren't experienced in our field, don't know what they're doing. They come in, they make mistakes, they need training, we spend all that money on training them, and then we don't, you know, they're no good, they don't work out, and we're weeks down the line and we still don't have somebody in the position that we need them to be in. Then when they do come in, our staff, I found, were very reluctant to push any work their way, because they were covering up for the mistakes they were making. They obviously couldn't come in and hit the ground running, because they didn't really know what they were doing very much, so the work wasn't being pushed aside. We were hiring these temps, you know, they were only on a full day basis, we couldn't get them any less than that, so we were paying for somebody for 8 hours, and they were probably doing about half an hour to an hour's work. Not the most cost effective way to run our business whatsoever. Then it fell on to me, you know, as office manager. I felt a huge weight on my shoulders that I needed to get this work done as well, and I knew the stresses that everyone else was under, the pressures they were under, so I would go take on some of their work, plunk myself at their desk, you know, the spare desk that I was up there, and could get the files and stuff. But then in turn, I would go back to my desk, I would have numerous amounts of emails that I hadn't got to, I would have piles of paperwork on my desk, there were invoices that hadn't been paid, you know, my day-to-day work suffered as well. I wasn't where I should have been for other staff who might have issues, might want to come and chat, which, you know, quite often did. I was quite an open sort of manager, and I like to think that people found me easy to talk to, so I would quite often see somebody on a daily basis, you know, just for a little bit of a rant or something, but my door was always open. And then when I was doing this other stuff, it wasn't, so it had a huge effect, you know. It wasn't just that one position that was not getting done or affected, it affected all of us, it affected every single person in that office, in that team, from the trainers who took the time to train these staff, to me, because, you know, and the other staff who were taking on the work. And it got stressful, it did get stressful, you know, and the guys that were left staff-wise to do it, they, you know, they were doing 3 people's worth of work, and that meant that their workload went through the roof, because you wouldn't have an extra member of staff if you didn't need them. And there was an expectation on their shoulders to get it done. They felt it, they felt pressured, but they would come in, there'd be all this work to do and a backlog of work, they wouldn't know where to start, their productivity actually fell, they did less work than ever. Which isn't great either, you know, it's not fantastic. And then there was the discussion of overtime, you know, do we ask people to do overtime? Then we were paying double and a half, maybe sometimes double time. People didn't want to do it, they'd had enough when they'd done their 8 hours, which is, you know, fair enough, completely understandable. And it just spirals, and then you get stressed out staff, which results in higher levels of sickness from them, so you have even more staff off. Staff start to feel undervalued by a company, because they feel like they're being pushed all this extra work, not being rewarded for it, not being paid for it, and most of all, they're not even being thanked for it. So in itself, that brought loads and loads of issues anyway, which you don't want. You don't want to see it as a manager or as a business owner. So what is the options? What are the options open to us? Fortunately, in this day and age, because of technology, we have seen an increase on companies like mine, like VA companies, so virtual assistants. And there are huge benefits to using a VA compared to trying to fuddle it over with staff that you've got, or trying to get in a temp. So the first thing is that VAs have gone out on their own. It's their job, it's their full-time job. You're going to find that they're not going to disappear on you because they've gone and got another full-time job, which you get with temps, and you can understand. If I was temping and I was offered a full-time job, I would, you know, take that too. But it means that you come in as the manager and the next day and you get this phone call saying, you know, sorry, but they're not coming back, and you've got to start again. You don't get that with VAs. It's their full-time job. They're always going to be there. You know, they're going to be at the end of the phone whenever you need them. They're flexible, so you can use them for an hour, for 2 hours, however long you think it's going to take that you need. You just book them in for that and you pay for that time. It's really cost effective. And if you don't need them, then you don't use them. You're not losing anything. You'll also find that they're so experienced, which is why they've gone out on their own, because they can do it, that they know how to use databases, they know how to use systems. So you're never going to find a VA who comes in and is going to know every single database and system that exists, because there are literally hundreds. But they will understand the fundamental workings of a database and a system. And if it's an accounting system, they'll understand what the expenses mean, they'll understand what an invoice is, they'll understand what your profit is, they'll understand what your working profit is, you know, because they will be doing that for themselves and they would have used some kind of system. So I use Free Agent, most people use QuickBooks. I would probably need somebody to show me very quickly and briefly how to use QuickBooks, but I would pick it up quite fast because, you know, they are very similar. So you don't spend as long training them, you don't waste as much time. They come in, they do their job, they get it done, and they go, they move on to their next client. You know, they've got work to do themselves, so they're not time wasting, which obviously, as I say, is a really efficient way to work. What you'll also find is that they'll build a really good relationship with your staff, because the more they are used, they won't make mistakes, the staff begin to trust them, they'll hand more over, they become an extension of your business and you, rather than just a temp who's only going to be there for a couple of weeks and then disappear and nobody sees them ever again. You know, if you build a really good relationship with a VA, then they're always going to be there, whether it's just for that, you know, it's not just going to be for that time. You can then use them for holiday cover, you can then use them for any sickness cover, because as I say, they're completely ad hoc, you can pick them up and drop them when you want, but they'll know your business, they'll know your systems, they'll know your procedures, so they're already great. It's almost like having a 0 hours contract employee, but you don't have any of the obligations that come along with employees. So you don't have to pay them for holidays, they don't get to take holidays on your time, you know, anything they do is on their time, it's on their watch. So it's a really, really cost effective way to do it. You'll also find that although many VAs say they work the normal 9 to 5 hours, many work much, much more than that, and they will get the job done. You know, if you've got deadlines and time pressures, they'll get it done, they'll work until it's done. But the benefit of having a VA is that they don't tend to change their charge rate. So they don't charge overtime, they charge an hourly rate and it's fixed, and that's what they charge. Which again is really cost effective, saves you loads of money, and it can be done out of hours as well if your VA is willing to do it. So building a relationship with a VA is definitely the way forward, if you ask me. They, like I said, become an extension of your company, so they get to know people in it, they get to know your business, they get to know your procedures. It's not just a gap fill. They can become so much more than that, and it's definitely the way forward. Obviously, I am a VA, I'm the contemporary PA, so if you want some more information, please feel free to have a look on my website. I do some blogs on there as well, so hopefully that gives a little bit more insight into what a VA is, what they can do, and how they can benefit you. It's www.thecontemporarypa.co.uk. I've got all my links to my social pages here, so obviously you can contact those. You can drop me a message here, a few comments, drop me a message on those, head over to my website, or send me an email if you've got any questions. There are more and more of us around and becoming more apparent, and as technology increases and people realise that they can do this kind of thing from home, it will be, you know, it is going to be the future. So it's definitely worth looking into it, getting it there, just in case you need it on a rainy day. You might think it's never going to happen to me, I don't need it, but actually if you don't, great, you've just got an extra name just in case, but you might find that you do, and then you've already got your plan ready. So yeah, that was today's topic. As I said, any questions, just let me know, drop me a line, and if not, then I will see you next week.